say, I love myself.
I love myself.
Just the way I am.
Just the way I am.
See, she loves herself just the way she is. That's my granddaughter. I always try to get like a talk, I can get a picture up there. So anyway, that's my 4-year-old Ava. And boy, does she love herself, And it's so funny, when we were little, we just really love, who we are. And it's, she's just a kick to watch just how much that she can get up and dance, and all of her inhibitions aren't, developed yet, and she just has a good time. It's funny because today we're talking about, kind of giving up this self-improvement, and on Friday night we went to here. There was a yogi. Is she a yogi? I don't know. I guess she's a yogi. She's from India. This lady, and she was amazing, and she spoke about basically what she said. I listened to this talk, and she said, "Close your eyes." So close your eyes right now, and imagine a circle, and put the person you love the most in that circle. Okay? So let me ask you, was the circle somebody in your family? Yeah. Mine was that too. And then she said, we never think about ourselves, loving ourselves that much. And until that we can really put ourselves in the circle and really love who we are. Love, and not just the stuff we do, but this, self, this beautiful, incredible self that we are. Until we can love that, we can't love each other. And we can't really have the life that we intend to have until we can really connect with that deep love in each and every one of us. So it's funny, like the talk title, it's Give Up Self-Improvement. And I'm thinking back in my life and how much self-improvement, it's my whole life been trying to be better, right? Trying to do things to get better. So I was thinking about in the 80s, and there was a commercial that came in and kept running in my mind. And I want to see if you guys remember this commercial. It's a little, I'm going to play it, it's a little clip. And then I'm going to talk about this commercial because that was part of my self-improvement, okay? Go ahead, David. It's like, this is how I saw myself, okay, in the 80s, I was a young mom, and, I've always wanted to live this. I talk about it here, I want to live fuller, and I want to live deeper. I really want to experience life. It's not really about too much just getting adventures, but I want to really, experience a lot of my life. And that was a way I thought to do it back then, that I had to be it all, right? And I was a young mom, and I had a job, and I just saw this commercial and I went, oh, she's beautiful, right? And she can, bring home the bacon, right? So she goes to work, and then she comes home and she cooks dinner, and then she greets her husband, and she's beautiful. When she greets her husband, I have this great love life, and, the kids are perfect, and I just thought, I can do this, I can do this, so that was my model for how I wanted to be. Well, you know how that turned out, husband's gone, the job's gone, it's like, that was kind of part of this whole process of seeking for me. And, and I think a lot of us, in different ways, do it differently. And that was the time of the 80s anyway. In the 80s, man, that was the women's struggle, kind of. They were still trying to decide what, they wanted to do. But each of us kind of lived that life, one way or the other. But I read where since the 1950s, we have more things and wealth than ever before, and we are more depressed than ever before. And I just think that's so interesting because we live in a culture that is really obsessed by self-improvement, by getting better, by getting more things, by you look in the TV, you look in magazines, everything you see, we're getting these messages that, we're just not good enough, or maybe we would be a little bit better, if things changed, or we improved ourselves a little bit, or we'd be a little better off, we lost a little bit of weight, we lived in a little nicer place if we, didn't have a little bag on our arm. It's funny, this talk was on self-improvement, and I have my sweater, and I thought, I better wear my sweater up there, because I kind of, my arm's swinging over. you know what? This is about self-worth. So go for it, little woman. So anyway, you know, if we add this, then we're going to be happy. And we are always trying to improve, you know, who we really are. And it's okay to improve who we are. But I'm going to read this to you. When we insatiably focus on improving ourselves, thinking that it will ultimately lead us to this place of happiness, we're almost always disappointed. And we set up this stressful dynamic of constantly striving, but we're never there. So we always think that whatever we do next, you know, this one's going to do it for me. You know, I think I'm going to get it after this. You know, and that was part of this 80s process for me too. Every workshop there ever was, every book, every self-help book, you need it. You know, I got it. I still have them. But I remember there was a class I took, and it was about, I don't know the name of the class, but we had to take tin foil, and then we had to make a pyramid out of it, and put it in a pyramid hat out of tin foil, and put it on our head. So I did that. My husband came home and was, okay, you gotta stop. And I had it on my head while I was cleaning house, and I was like, what is that? You know, I'm getting energy from this, you know? And it's like crazy, you know? Really good one for me, okay? So, anyway, so I was doing that and still doing my thing about trying to be the best ever, you know, wife, mother, everything I could be. And then the moment came when I remember saying, man, you know, there's a song where I was saying that says, I'm dancing just as fast as I can. You know that saying? And that kept going over to me. I'm dancing as fast as I can, over and over and over. I just can't do it anymore, you know? And so just about that time, my husband got transferred, and I had to leave my job, and we moved away, and all of a sudden, you know, it went the other way. I wasn't involved in all these activities anymore. I was kind of home, and it was, you know, just quiet, and I was still born then. So I couldn't, you know, then that wasn't it either. I felt empty. I felt like not fulfilled. So here's what I figured out is there's no lack of self-improvement or adding anything to you that can make up for your lack of self-acceptance. So through that whole period of my life, if I think from the beginning, I would have really accepted who I was first and did all this stuff later, I wouldn't have done all the stuff I did, you know? So it's about self-acceptance. Without self-acceptance, then the happiness of more starts to fade, you know? And here's what Holden says about this, Robert Holden. He says, the paradox of self-acceptance is that when we allow ourselves to accept who we are finally, where we are, you know, in our life, what's really happening, the qualities about ourselves, the aspects about who we are, we actually set ourselves up and give ourselves the opportunity then to make the changes in our life. You know, then we can make our improvements and our enhancements to ourselves. And our lives are then kind of, you know, they go in a more authentic way. We're not directed by every, you know, thing out there. Somebody else isn't directing your life saying, you know, this is what you need. This TV commercial isn't saying you're going to be better if your hair color is this way. You know, you're not going to be better if, you know, you lose a little weight. It won't be that way. You know, when we are really authentic with ourselves, we know what to do. We know what's important. It doesn't mean we don't have fun with stuff. We don't take a workshop. We don't color our hair. We don't do fun things. But it just doesn't mean that that's, you know, so important to us that that becomes who we are. And without it, we fall apart. And that's what I'm trying to say here. You know, because I think we become so obsessive and we demand these improvements in order to feel happy. And we stop searching, I think, when finally we realize who we are. When we finally get it, you know, that we walk with something bigger inside of us. When we finally get it, we stop this search. And you know, I love studying all of the great teachers and the saints and stuff. And Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, they all have this, you know, there's a photograph of all of them that's just laughing. You've heard of the laughing Jesus and the laughing Buddha and stuff. Well, that came about from what I read, was from when they finally got the cosmic joke. The cosmic joke was that we already had it within us. We didn't need to seek anymore. When they finally realized that this beautiful soul was inside of us and that all we needed to do was connect with that center, they started to laugh. And they realized that this big searching was over. And that's what I'm saying, is that all of us, if we could just get it, that we don't need to seek so much, that we just need to probably let go of a lot of stuff that we think we know and connect with something, that is already there. This picture is, I love it because I don't particularly love the picture, but I like the idea that it represents. Years ago, Judy and I, when we went through ministerial school, one of the books that was recommended, and really I haven't picked it up for a long time, but it's called Concentric Perspective. Remember that book? Eric Butterworth. And he talks about this picture. And I remember seeing this picture. And I kind of got it when the teacher was talking about it, what this idea of God and me is about, what this idea of being and being me is about. And what he says is that if you look at this, that this one side, take the left side that you're looking at, is beingness. That's God. And the other side is you. It's being me. He calls it being and being me. And he says God's everywhere. The energy of the divine is everywhere possible. You can't, there's no place that God is not. God is where we live and move and have our being. And that center spot is where you are. That center spot is where we meet God, where you and I meet God, where we meet our divine. And the more that we can get to that center, the more that we can rest in God, as the Course in Miracles says, or the more that we can rest in that center, the more that our lives will come together, the more that we will love ourselves, the more that we will accept ourselves. So when we can let go of everything around us, get out of our head stuff, quit trying to improve this and improve that, and reach into that beautiful, incredible center within us, then our lives change. Our lives change. It's merging with Spirit. That's what we're doing. We're becoming God's in the making. We're merging with something that is so much bigger than we ever thought possible. And we do it every so often. Every so often we're really in the flow. How many times have you been doing something with somebody that you love, or a sunset? You hit those moments every so often, those peak moments. But I'm talking about living there. I'm talking about really filling at that center so much of the time that, you're always filled with the energy of God. And when you're always filled, everything you do, everything you do out in the world is different than when you're not. You're more kind, you're more intelligent, you're more wise when you are able to use that connecting with the world. Eckhart Tolle's teaching is so key to me about this, because he and I've taught it, Judy and I talk about it all the time, we have it for a while, is awaken doing, right? Awaken doing, it's called. When you're awake, you do in the world. And that's what he talks about, is that he says awaken doing is a modality that we should be basically in. He says, and here's what he says, awaken doing is a term that we've used for a while. Tolle states that the modalities of awaken doing, are joy, enthusiasm, and acceptance. Joy, enthusiasm, and acceptance. He says that we always need to be in one of these. For anything else, we're causing to our own suffering or the suffering, and if we're in our own suffering, we are suffering into the world. So we need to be in one of those. He says, what you will do will be of the ego and dysfunctional unless it rises out of one of these states. Joy, enthusiasm, or acceptance. And he says, now they can change through the day. You can be in joy. See, joy to me is the state of who we really are. Who we are is joy, And then when something comes up and it's hard, in our lives, we drop down to an awakened state is still acceptance. I have to accept it, but I'm not feeling real joyful right now. And then enthusiasm just means that it's that same joy energy with a goal attached to it. It's a vibration of consciousness. And he says that one of those three things should be operating in our life at all times. And we'll know that when we're in our center, we're in that. That's why I'm talking about the center so much. So when we are defaulting to our center, when we are living in our center, we are in those three things: joy, acceptance, and enthusiasm. So let me talk about just a few minutes about it before I quit. If you can't enjoy something and you have to do it, you have to at least accept it, right? If you're not enjoying, there's stuff in your life you just can't accept. If you've got somebody, if you have a boss or you have a spouse or something that is always in your ear, and there's always this stuff going on, you've got to learn to deal with that, to accept it or to leave it, right? Or to leave it. You've got to do that. And willingness is the key here. He says if you can't bring it with, you gotta walk away. Because our state of consciousness is more important than anything you'll ever do in life. Right now, your state of consciousness, where you are, is way more important than what's going on in your life. Doing is secondary always to that. Okay, and then enjoyment. I said enjoyment is joy. That's who we are. We were born in joy. We are joy expressing as each person. You know, that's who you are. You are Bob expressing, joy. And when you're not expressing joy, you still are that. You're just not seeing it. You know what I'm saying? So you're always happy, you just don't know it. That's what I'm saying. You just don't know it. But that is the truth. That is the truth. We got too much covering it up. If we quit thinking, we feel the joy. We're always starting to wait to live, instead of being present. We wait on joy. And it's always with us. It's with us all the time. When we remember, when we go back to that center, And here's so important to remember this, that joy doesn't come from my little baby girl, I love my little grandkids. I love them and they're joyful. But that's not where joy comes from. The joy comes from in here. They trigger it, see? The joy out there triggers what's in here. I wouldn't see it if it wasn't here. You can't see joy out there, until it's in here first. So whenever you feel joy inside, or whether you see something that you think makes you joyful, that's not what it is. That's not what it is. It's in here. You carry that joy with you. So joy is the center of our being, and that's who you are, And our job is to be able to take that joy and take it out to the world, and do with that joy. That's what Tony's talking about. That's our awakened doing, is whatever you're doing, is doing it with that joy, or acceptance, or enthusiasm. If you have a goal, it's enthusiasm. So think about today when you leave, what are you going to be doing today? Debbie, when you're working, at Common Ground, I know that you do this. It's like, there's a joy there. And if something comes up and it's not joyful, guess what? You accept it. You accept it. Every one of us have to remember that, And by accepting it, I'm not saying you just, you lay down and die. I'm not saying give up. That's not what it is.